Right. I'm good, man. I'm already in the chat. I'm already looking to. Yeah.
All right,
I love
I'll
it.
tweet
I
you,
love it.
and we'll get going. Oh, I even see the YouTube notification on my phone.
There you go.
Hey, wait, I'm in that. Wait, you want me to join? I'm already in.
All right. Okay, Dolphins fans, we are at championship weekend. No, the Dolphins aren't playing, but we still have plenty of Dolphins football to discuss. We want to hear from you on all matters today. How do you ultimately judge the 2023 season? What are the 2 or 3 most important moves the Dolphins should make this offseason? And are you all in, go for broke, win now in 2024? I am. Welcome to this week's edition of Dolphins Deep Dive with Perk. I'm your host, South Florida Sun Sentinel Dolphins columnist Chris Perkins. That's David Furones, your South Florida Sun Sentinel Dolphins writer. We want to send a special welcome to our viewers, especially those viewers who participate in the chat. Look, I want to commend those in the chat for making it a respectful space all season. There's no name calling, there's no ugliness. There's very intelligent discussion and exchange of ideas. I've learned some stuff in that chat. Much respect to you folks in the chat. As a reminder, if you miss any part of this show, you can get our podcast on Amazon, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts. It is time to shift into off-season mode. But before we do, we'll say one last goodbye to 2023 by seeing what everyone thought. Success? Not a success. What are the 2 or 3 most important moves the Dolphins can make this offseason? You know, I think they should bring back Xavent Howard. I think if you don't bring back X, they can avoid Jalen Ramsey, and now your whole thing kind of falls apart. Also, are you all in, go for broke, win now in 2024? Or are you taking a bit of a cautious, financially prudent approach? I'm all in for it. And of course, we've got David Furones, so that means we have got our Furones bonus. The off-season waters are still a little murky. Regardless, let's dive in. All right, so I appreciate everybody in the chat. Mal B. Crazy, Peter McDowell from Canada, Nuke 942001, Bob Brinson, Raphael Courtwright, Stephen Smith, Ender Fireplay ZYT. Hello to everybody who is in here. We're going to start off with you, Furones. Everybody saw my report card, saw my column about the Dolphins needing to make changes, how they went 1-6 against playoff teams, how they were outscored by an average of 32-16 when they played playoff teams. Let's hear from you, David Furones. Let's hear from the viewers. What's your one last assessment of the Dolphins' 2023 season? Did you think it was a success? Why or why not? What did you think, Furones?
Yeah, the 2023 Miami Dolphins are a team that looked historically great at times and at other times looked fraudulent, like it didn't belong on the same field against competitive, contending teams. I mean, that is what it is. Listen, there are memories that this team created that will always last. 70-20 against the Broncos, how big it felt to win the opener in LA against Justin Herbert and the Chargers, the lopsided scores throughout against those lesser teams. The number 1 offense, the number 2 scoring offense, top passing offense, number 6 rushing offense, the way the defense looked for that large middle chunk of the season with mostly everyone healthy, all the elaborate celebrations. It was a roller coaster ride, literally and figuratively. But at the end of the day, what's going to stick in your craw is that none of that showed against the tougher teams. Look at the top 3 teams in the AFC, 0-2 against Buffalo, 0-2 against Kansas City, and gave up 56 to the Baltimore Ravens. And then the biggest downfall that will always stick with you is you lost to the Tennessee Titans with a 2-touchdown lead and 3 minutes remaining. Some epic, never before seen since 1970-something stuff. And that wasn't even against one of those aforementioned good teams. So you could have gotten the number 2 seed if you just finished off that game alone. And in that scenario, could have rested starters against Buffalo as you were locked into number 2. Wouldn't have felt you had something to prove at the end of the Ravens game, and maybe you sit Bradley Chubb before he gets hurt. And in that scenario, you would have played the Steelers in a 2-7 matchup. So I would really like the Dolphins' chances to get their first playoff win since 2000 if all that played out, as they would have been at home against the T.J. Wattless Steelers, and then you also get the Chiefs at home in the divisional round. So all of it just big sigh at the end of the day because of how much potential the team had from what it did show against the lesser teams, and then just how it did not come to fruition down the stretch and against the tougher competition.
All right, I want to remind everybody on the chat that some of your questions I will be answering later on today in our online story, our online Q&A. But let's go to this one, Furones, and this is from Peter McDowell. Perk still repping up here in Canada. Can we find a mobile quarterback? I'm going to answer this later on today, but I'll say this. I don't think this is about Tua. I don't think this is about Tua at all. I think it's more about the offense and what you need to add. And, look, maybe you need to make Tua's job easier with less pre-snap motion and cut down on some of that required communication. Maybe you need to max protect more. I don't know. Maybe you need a receiving tight end. Maybe you need more of a power running game. I think it's about all of those things before it's about Tua. Furones, what do you think? How much of this is on Tua? How much is it on Tua's lack of mobility? Because everybody is looking at Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes. They're looking at those guys. Tell me about Tua and his mobility.
Well, yeah, we're at that part of the season where, like 2 years ago, 2021, you're watching all those AFC quarterbacks compete in the playoffs, and then you're looking at it like, wait, Tua can't do those things. But it's not about that. Tua will run a game the way he does. And he even admitted it the first time he faced Josh Allen this season, and even Justin Herbert. Whenever he was asked about those other quarterbacks with the big arms, mobile, all that stuff, he admits, hey, okay, that's not who I am as a quarterback. I am who I am. He's going to beat you with those 4 superpowers that Darrell Bevell, quarterback's coach, has mentioned to us: the accuracy, anticipation, vision, and I always forget, what is it, timing? Timing.
I think it's timing. I know, I forget them too.
4. We'll go back and check to make sure all that was accurate, as accurate as they say Tua is. But he's not going to win a game the same way. Like when you watch. Okay, you're going to watch Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson in this AFC Championship game. When you watch Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen in that divisional round, sure, you say, okay, he's not that type of quarterback, but it's not like he has to be that kind of quarterback to win a game. I mean, against any one of those guys. It's because it's going to be the Dolphins defense against those guys. And then what Tua and the Dolphins offense does is just a complete separate entity against that opposing defense. So it's not like you watch what those guys are doing and say, well, how are we going to keep up if Tua doesn't do those same things? Well, Tua and the Dolphins offense can win the way they do, which was the number 1 offense at the end of the day this past season, and number 1 passing offense. Granted, it didn't show up against the big teams, and that's just the next step, is that now end-of-game scenarios like against Tennessee when Tua had a chance to either kill the game when he had the lead or then go and win it with a field goal drive, didn't do either. When it comes down to the Buffalo game at the end, throwing the interception, needing a touchdown late, and just how the offense didn't show up in the second half. All those things, yes, Tua has to shoulder the blame and be better for it, but it's not like you have to transform Tua or find a quarterback that does all those other things, because there's just not that many of them out there. They just all happen to be in the AFC, honestly.
All right, so look, Furones, when we talk about the season that we just had, we have a graphic here about the Dolphins and their average score against the good teams, and it was not good. It was, and this was based out of, I was hammering on the Dolphins for being 1-6 against the good teams, and everybody was telling me, well, nobody is good against the good teams. So I did the math, and it was like based on, people saying that, well, everybody gets beaten badly by the good teams. Nobody who averages 30 against the good teams. So I did the math, and you can see we got a graphic here that the Dolphins' average scores against playoff teams and the other teams in the league, their average scores against playoff teams. And you can see how far the Dolphins lag behind here. We have that graphic there, Sean, that we can put up. But the Dolphins are really far behind other teams as far as what they do against the quality teams. And to me, that's one of the...
You had it listed, well, as far as teams' records, other playoff teams and how they fared against fellow playoff teams.
Yep, I've got the records. Look, the Dolphins were 1-6 against other playoff teams, and at the top of that list, we have let me call it up here.
Were they 6-2 or something?
6-2 and 6. Yeah. Let's see here. So we have Buffalo at 6-2, Baltimore at 6-3, Philadelphia at 6-3, and so San Francisco at 6-3. So you start to see some of these trends. Tampa Bay and the LA Rams were both 2-6. And that was the second worst next to the Dolphins, who are at 1-6. So you start to see how the Dolphins don't stack up against the good teams. And before we go any further, let me say what's up to Papa Hog, Ocean Breeze Detail, to Jack Thompson, Douglas Anderson. And when we talk about the Dolphins, we can't get away from what's going to happen in the offseason. And look, here's something that we have here from Bob Brinson. Hopefully there will be some serious discussions on salary cap, who the fans should let go, who they need to keep. Now, you know my thing. I already say that I think they should keep Xavent Howard. And you know, part of this gets into what happened this season. Well, let's go back to last season in the cornerback situation. You wanted to have X and Byron Jones, right? That didn't work out. When you had them 3 years ago, right? It was a lockdown duo. Byron Jones gets injured in 2022. 2023, you want to have Jalen Ramsey and X, but Jalen Ramsey misses the first 7 games. X ends up missing a total of 5 games. You only had those two together for 3 games. Well, those two, and then you were going to have your edge rushers, right, of Jalen Ramsey and Bradley Chubb. And then you were going to have your 2 guys in the middle with Christian Wilkins and Zach Sealer. I say bring all that back. I say run it all back. You franchise Christian Wilkins. You see if you can talk X down in some of his money, but you have the potential of having something special there. If you don't have X, you're going to have a situation of where quarterbacks are saying, well, we're going to avoid Jalen Ramsey, and we'll, in the base, we just throw at the other guy. We'll just say, for argument's sake, it's Eli Apple. And in the nickel, we're going to throw at the slot, Kader Kohu, and the other boundary, Eli Apple, and we're going to avoid Jalen Ramsey altogether. And so now if you don't have a 100% pass rush with Phillips and Chubb, the quarterback has all day to throw. You don't have your 2 lockdown corners. He has a target, numerous targets that he can choose among. I think that X is a big key to all of this. So I'm bringing X back. I know that's long-winded, Furones. What do you think?
Yeah, from a football standpoint, yes, and then it's also if X can stay healthy, because X will be another year older with another injury on him. I believe I heard you once use that exact phrasing about a certain player, so I'm stealing that from you. Now you don't want to say it about X because that doesn't go with your opinion on this matter. But now, if the Dolphins were to cut him with the post-June 1 designation, there are $18.5 million in cap savings to go with that. Now, that's post-June 1, so you can't use that in the first wave of free agency or really the first couple of months of free agency. So that would be more so if you max out before then, and then you maybe use that to hold off on signing your draft class or have some space for a late free agent addition, some things like that. But there is a lot in cap savings, but it wouldn't be the savings that you could use immediately for, say, like the Christian Wilkins franchise tag, or locking him into an extension, signing your own free agents before they go hit the market, signing outside free agents. So from that standpoint, there wouldn't be so much to gain from it. I'm writing a big salary cap thing that'll come out today on sunsentinel.com, so I'll try to break some of this down even further. But yeah, X is one of those where you could go one way or the other. If you bring him back, then you do have that number 2 corner opposite Jalen Ramsey in the base or in the nickel. At least you don't have the 2 other corners that teams can attack outside of Jalen Ramsey. We saw how Kader Kohu got picked on. If you don't have X back, you would need to really bring in someone that could be that number 2 guy, or draft a guy, or have because it should probably also have Cam Smith develop into a viable option as another corner. And he only played 20 defensive snaps his rookie season as the Dolphins' first selection, second-round pick in the 23 draft. So you'll need some development there. So from a football standpoint, it would be ideal for a team that's contending now to bring back that veteran. Financially, there is something to gain if you cut him, especially with the post-June 1 designation, but you also don't get that money right away. So there's a lot to balance. That's kind of one of those that's really up in the air for the Dolphins.
Yeah, no, excellent point by you, because, right, they won't have that money immediately, and so that money is just going to kind of be not wasted, but it's, you can't use it to get what you immediately need. So, yeah, that's definitely something to consider. As we leave this segment and go into our next segment, there's some interesting stuff going on here in the chat. I want your opinion on this, Furones. Douglas Anderson says fullback can go. Kevin Williams says, hell no, Engle stays. What do you think? Here's what I thought. Engle made a Pro Bowl this season. Last season, when the Dolphins were 31st in rushing attempts, I thought that, yes, you can't have the fullback when you're 31st in rushing attempts. This year, to Mike McDaniel's credit, the Dolphins were, I believe, 15th in rushing attempts. And so that makes the fullback more of a credible, needed position. Raheem Mostert goes to the Pro Bowl. He sets the franchise record for rushing touchdowns. He rushes for over 1,000 yards for the first time in his career. However, I can see the point of not having the fullback. I'm keeping Alec Engle. I'll put my thought out there right now. What is your thought? Engle, stay, go? What do you think?
Well, and they already signed him to an extension during the season. Brought him out for the press conference and everything when that happened. I think didn't make him the highest paid fullback. I know that's not saying that much, but yes, yeah, he did make the Pro Bowl. Also, it's not like there's that many AFC fullbacks to compete against, but that is still, so he had to get it over Patrick Ricard of Baltimore, who had it before him. So that is still a distinction that is to be honored. So yeah, I mean, the team is sticking with Alec Engle. Sure, maybe there'd be a $2 million in cap savings, but he's an intricate part of this run game. Number 6 in rushing this season, he was a part of that. And this offense it utilizes him. So it's not like you're gonna really take those $2 million and do much with it for whatever you can get. When you have a solid guy, a Pro Bowl player at his position. So I think the Dolphins are certainly sticking with Alec Engle.
Yep, and there we see the average scores of playoff teams versus playoff teams there. You can see the Ravens, they average beating playoff opponents 30-16. And then if you go to the bottom, you see the Dolphins average losing 32-16. Dallas, I thought Dallas and the Dolphins were pretty much the same team. And you see that Dallas right there, they lost 28-24 against playoff teams. But it's a chart that kind of shows you, the Ravens averaged 30 against playoff teams. Buffalo averaged 29 against playoff teams. San Francisco averaged 28 points per game against playoff teams. And so it just kind of goes down. Houston was even at 25-25. Detroit even at 22-22. Kansas City, just barely 21-19. They had the average victory. So it just kind of shows you what different teams did against playoff teams. All right, so that is segment 1. Let us migrate over to segment 2. I think it's on the chat. It's one that everybody is very excited about. What are the 2 or 3 most important moves the Dolphins should make this offseason? I've already told you two of mine. You bring X back. I don't know if that's a move. That's not really a move. I bring X back. I franchise tag Christian Wilkins to keep him here. And let me tell you, kind of the bigger point of my strategy here is, we're going to get into this in another segment, but I am running this back for one last big run. That I think you have good talent with this team. You just kind of have to adjust the way that you use this talent. But you've got one of the 5 or 6 most talented rosters in the NFL. I'm not quitting on it. I'm not quitting on the Mike McDaniel, Chris Greer plan, the vision. You've just got to make some changes. Sometimes some tweaks, some are changes. But I'm bringing a lot of the most important guys back. Now, correct me if I'm wrong here, Furones. If you bring X back and you franchise Christian Wilkins, probably goodbye Rob Hunt, right? Goodbye Andrew Van Ginkel. Like, you're going to have to make some very tough decisions. Maybe you try to shake Jerome Baker down for some cash. I believe he's going to count, 14-7 against the cap. But I'm bringing X back. I'm franchising Wilkins. That's where I'm starting. What are your thoughts, Furones?
All right, so before the Dolphins can do anything, they have to improve their immediate cap situation because when the offseason started, they were at 41 mil over the cap, and now that has ballooned to 52 because they've had to sign futures contracts and other bonuses and stuff have kicked in for certain players. So now they are up to 52 million over the cap projected at this point in time. So first thing is you have to find out how you're trimming that number in order to be able to operate. So first thing I'm looking at is really where you can cut, and that's first place I look at is Emmanuel Ogbah. There was an out in his contract at this point anyway, and then he has not contributed. He's after he signed that 4-year, $65 million deal. Coming off of those back-to-back 9-sack seasons, he didn't produce in 22, and then he had the triceps injury. And then last season, buried on the depth chart, even a healthy scratch in one game. And then guys were playing ahead of him or equal to him that were just signed within the week in Justin Houston and Bruce Irvin going into that playoff game. And then Cameron Good was getting some snaps over him. It was just... And he's a second-year guy, 7th-round pick, a special teamer. So it seemed like Melvin Ingram had just been brought back, and then on his first practice squad elevation, he was playing ahead of him. So I think that move is easy, especially with Ogbah now into his 30s. There are $13.7 million to be gained with $4 million in dead cap if you go ahead and cut him. So that helps chop down into that number. And then you have to restructure a lot of those big deals, converting base salary into those prorated bonuses. It kicks the can down the road, but the Dolphins are in a win-now mode. So to hell with what's going on in 25, 26, 27. You need to get yourself set because you are trying to win now in this window in 2024. So go ahead and save your $18.2 million on Jalen Ramsey, restructuring the deal. Again, he still gets paid. Steve Ross just writes the check. And basically you're just placing the burden into future years, spreading out that burden, and it's just going to affect you in future seasons when by then this core will be gone and you're probably rebuilding or sort of reloading whether you have Tua long term or whether you're going into a complete rebuild with some of the core pieces sticking around, but a lot of the veterans now gone in future seasons. But you can get 18.2 that way out of Jalen Ramsey restructuring, Bradley Chubb $14 million and Tyreek Hill $12.5. So that already gets you to a big spot. And then we talked about X. If you go ahead and cut him, you're not going to get that money right away. So you don't really get into the positive, into the green with the salary cap space. But I'm looking at Christian Wilkins and how you mentioned the franchise tag is pretty lucrative for a defensive tackle. It'd be the $23 million, 23.3 for a franchise tender for an interior defensive lineman. So that's a big on the salary cap for this one season. Now, what you also can do is, hey, Christian Wilkins is a foundational piece. When the rebuild started, he was that first round pick that the Dolphins got in 2019. He's been very reliable for you over the years, hasn't missed many games, and then he added the pass rush to his game this season. That's one that he really won in that regard because the Dolphins made him an offer they felt was fair. Going into the season, of course, remember he held out in games or in practices during team portions of practice during training camp, and he bet on himself, and he won. He won big because he got 9 sacks this year, and the Dolphins were probably counting that he wasn't going to prove that he could provide that interior pass rush. So now he's going to be more expensive, but you could also lessen the immediate salary cap burden if you sign him long term. But again, you're going to dig yourself into a deeper hole in future seasons. So, but if you're in this win now mode, go ahead and do that. So those are a couple things. If you want to bring back Christian Wilkins, keep that salt and pepper combination of Wilkins and Sealer, then you could be better off signing him to an extension, and that gives you more flexibility currently, where maybe you could still keep Robert Hunt around. I think Andrew Van Ginkel wouldn't cost too much, and he's probably pretty important because you need a pass rush to start the season while Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips are still recovering from their Achilles and ACL and Achilles injury, respectively, between those two. So, and then Connor Williams, maybe you could get it at a discount because he's also coming off of an ACL tear, but again, you'll probably need Liam Eichenberg to fill in that role early on. But Connor Williams is also a free agent, but one who has played very well at center when he has been healthy, snapping issues aside. But a lot on the Dolphins' plate.
Yeah, David Laser says AVG has to stay because we won't have JP and Chubb until midway. That's a very good point. I'm going to address that tomorrow online or later on today online. By the way, people whose questions will be addressed online, Mal B. Crazy, Peter McDowell, Stephen Smith, Bob Brinson, Stephen Kamara, David Laser, and Rob. Send in questions. I'm going to address some more of these online later on today. Let's see here. What did I want to talk about? Peter McDowell says, hate to go there, but I feel we need a change at GM as Greer is too comfortable and love to see a new GM come in and help our drafting and talent assessment. We need to hit on some cheap free agents. You can address that or you can address this. When you talked about how the Dolphins can free up some cash initially in the offseason, looking at your trends from Chris Greer and Mike McDaniel, what do you think they do with that cash? Are you going after a cornerback even though you just drafted Cam Smith? Are you going after a left tackle knowing that Armstead and Kendall Lamb are vulnerable? Are you going offensive line, defense? What do you think those two will lean toward first in free agency?
Boy, well, it depends where you lose something. See, because it's pretty light. See, because going into this past season, the Dolphins roster felt pretty just well-rounded. It felt like they had just about everything that they needed. So I think it's kind of like, and then obviously you lost so many players due to injury, and then that's sort of where the downfall turned out. But I think, it just depends on where you lose something because you're not going to bring back everything. So if it is Xavent Howard that gets cut post June 1, then you're going to need a cornerback. If it's Robert Hunt or Christian Wilkins, you're going to need either that interior offensive lineman or interior defensive lineman. So that's what I'm looking at. Jerome Baker, we talked about, shake him down. But then if you end up just moving on from him, then, you probably need another inside linebacker. To go with David Long. David Long was really good for the Dolphins this season, especially against the run, but you'll need that other guy with him, and because you don't want to count necessarily on Duke Riley to be a starter. Keep him in that rotational backup role. So it really depends on where you're in pass rush. You can stand to improve on the pass rush regardless. You need a third receiver, and you could stand to grab a pass catching tight end. So any of those things. Now, if you get a tight end, will the Dolphins utilize him? I mean, we saw what happened with Mike Gesicki, but there are a few holes that aren't necessarily huge priorities, but then the big priorities come depending on what you do lose this season.
Yeah, it's gonna be very interesting to see what the approach of the Dolphins is here. Let me ask you this, and I can put this out for our viewers also, because to me, for years they've been beaten by Buffalo and Baltimore, right? Just pounded, just drummed. I mean, It's not even close, and they get beaten up front. They get out physicaled on both lines of scrimmage. But and so I was thinking the Dolphins need more of a tough guy approach. But I was thinking they still got their butts kicked by Baltimore and Buffalo, even when they had Mike Pouncey and when they had Richie Incognito, when they had Paul Soliai, when they had Randy Starks. I don't know what the answer is there, Furones. It's past quarterbacks. It's past coaching. It's past toughness. Like when we talk about moves in the offseason, you've got to be able to beat Kansas City, Baltimore, and Buffalo. Like what? I'm truly stuck as to why they can't beat Buffalo and Baltimore. I really do not know. Do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I know that is the number one question for this offseason, and how you convert this team into being able to compete against those teams. Right. But it's not something that there's just a concrete fix for. So it's not like, oh, we need to address this position because it's what wins against those teams. Right. It's just you need experience in those games. So Dolphins have picked up on experience. I mean, it has been a young team that then has added veteran talent that does have that experience, but sort of that young core has needed to gain experience. And then you're playing more of those games, you compete in more of those games, and then over time you should get better in those situations. But aside from that, it's not like there's some kind of big fix as to this is how you beat the best teams.
Yeah, it's really, really puzzling to me why they can't beat Buffalo and Baltimore. And like I say, and like you said, it's not just one thing. It's like the sands just shift all the time in the favor of Baltimore and Buffalo. I can't figure this out. Rob asked an interesting question that I'm going to answer tomorrow. I keep saying tomorrow online, later today online, but I want your thoughts on this. Any thoughts on whether Vic Fangio returns? The scheme he operates and the players he favors must inform who returns and who doesn't. I would have thought, or you would have to tell him. And on this, Bob Brinson says, how about allow Fangio to tell Greer what he needs instead of the other way around? So Fangio, when is he coming back? How does that affect the players that you put on his defense? And how about letting Fangio have a say in who's on his defense? What are your thoughts on that?
That was one thing I found really interesting throughout the season is whenever the Dolphins either were needed to make a move at a position or had just made a move. And we asked Vic Fangio in our Thursday morning press conferences with him, and he's there like, I don't know. That's what Chris did. I had nothing to do with it. He didn't ask me. So I'm wondering, wait, so you brought this veteran, tenured, experienced defensive mind, the hottest defensive coordinator that was out there in the past hiring cycle, and you don't ask for his opinion on what he wants with his defense when it comes time to make a move. That was something I found a bit perplexing is, well, make sure he's in line with whatever you do bring in because he's the one that ultimately has to use these pieces. So, yes, I would have liked Vic Fangio's opinion to count a little more in some of the decisions that are made on that side of the ball.
Yeah, it's amazing that what we're led to believe is that that Fangio isn't intimately involved in the collection of talent, and you would think that he would be. Whether Vic Fangio is coming back, I don't know. We haven't really heard anything on that. We don't have a lot of insight. I don't know what the factors are in Fangio coming back. We know that there was some interest in the Philadelphia defensive coordinator's job, which is now open. So I have no idea. I really have no insight, but that's going to be a huge thing for next year. Or just he's 65 years old. He was just coming off a sabbatical. Then did he go through a season and say, "Man, I don't have to deal with this bleep"? Right. Like I have one game plan, and Jalen Ramsey's giving me a bunch of crap over our game plan, and that he wants to do a certain thing, and then I'm not part of personnel decisions. Could he just decide, hey, this turned out to be a lot more to deal with than I anticipated. Let me just go back to, he is 65 years old, but he is also someone that loves the game. So,
I can't tell you one way or the other, but I would be inclined to believe, yeah, he'd like to stick around.
Yeah, I would think so too. I would think so too. I would hope so because I like having that experience in the room. I think that's very good for this defense. Before we go on to the Furones bonus, let me ask you this. That's right. By the way, somebody complimented your beard a couple of weeks ago. I forgot who it was, but it might have been Grandizer, 712 or whatever. But they were very complimentary of your beard. I forgot to tell you about that. I don't know why. I just thought of that now.
Anyway, I do it for you all.
There you go, baby. There you're doing it for the people. I like that. So there's some Tua talk on here, as you would imagine. I want to get your thoughts on this. This is from Bob Brinson. Tua is great so long as he can play his game. Tua doesn't demonstrate any improvisational capability. This from Gate 5 Way. Hire Belichick, trade Tua, draft Drake May. And then finally, this one from Raphael Courtwright. Tua's ceiling is elite QBs, his flooring, my opinion and your thoughts, gentlemen. So I think that Raphael is asking what is Tua's floor. I think Tua was at his floor under Brian Flores. I don't think he can get much lower than that. He's a quality quarterback. I think he's a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback, not an all-pro caliber quarterback. I think if you put more stuff around him, a receiving tight end, a better running game, and took a little more off his plate, all the pre-snap reads, all the motion, smooth out the process, get that play call into the huddle faster, I think you're going to get more out of Tua. Again, I don't think this is about Tua. I think this is more about your offensive system. I think Mike McDaniel, who I think has done a great job, by the way. I don't think he deserves to be fired no matter what you read from my writing. I think he's done a great job. He needs to do better. And you should.
You're backtracking, Perk. You're backtracking now.
I'm not. I know. You should do better with this amount of talent. That's the thing. The bar is higher with this amount of talent. So I think if you, Mike McDaniel has maximized Tua's ability, his mental capability and his physical ability. I think now it's about taking stuff off of Tua's plate and redistributing the load. But any of that stuff about Tua, what do you think? Do conditions have to be great? Do you want to hire Belichick and trade Tua and draft Drake May? And what is Tua's ceiling and floor? Any of that stuff, Furones?
Yeah, well, you're not bringing in a rookie quarterback right now to try to just throw him into this contender and win right away. Okay, yeah, we saw C.J. Stroud as a rookie, got the Texans to the playoffs, but that's him leading a young team and also in a much weaker division. Listen, you're not bringing in a rookie quarterback to go and beat Josh Allen right away in year one. And you kind of have this window right now to win with this roster. So it's not like, you just plug and play a quarterback. The only way would be if it was a seasoned veteran that could produce just as much or more than Tua. And Tua already led the league in passing yards. So it's just not really in the cards to get rid of Tua right now. You have him on the fifth-year option, so you stick that out, or you extend him to a long-term deal if it's at a reasonable price, which we talked about the cap number. If you extend him, then you could also help your cap in the future, but obviously you don't want to commit to a huge number. We know, like with Josh Allen, all those graphics are coming up on ESPN and being displayed, how the cap hit just jumps going into next season. So it's going to be a lot more difficult for the Bills to put a winner around him in years to come. So right now you still have Tua at a very reasonable price, and you will next year, and then depending on what you do going forward. But you have a win now situation. So you keep the guy that you've had, that you've developed, that you've pretty much doubled in production since Mike McDaniel got there, and then now had his first full healthy season. You're not going to move off of him. It's just now finding that next step. All right, you improved this play in 22 in his third year in the league, first under McDaniel with Tyreek Hill, with Jalen Waddle. Then you had him healthy for a first full season, so he added that. Now get him another weapon. You also use the run game very well in year two of this system. So that was a plus. But now either simplify the offense, have him improve in managing against pressure, because that was a huge thing for him. Is once he dealt with pressure, he wasn't the same quarterback. So now he's got to make improvements in that regard. And then going to a second read, third read, he's shown flashes at times, but still that is an area where he's trying to get the ball out quick. So that's part of why sometimes there weren't that many sacks allowed. But when there were, and when he was pressured, then he's getting the ball out quick, just committing to a first read. And maybe if he extends to being able to, well, he's not that good at extending plays, but and lengthening the time from the snap to the throw. But if he can improve in some of those areas, then he could take another step. There's definitely another step for Tua to take.
How about this one? I like that. There is another step for him to take. There definitely is. From Key Dave, I think it is. Draft Michael Penix or Joe Milton III. Tua needs competition. Penix from Washington and from Tennessee. Let's separate the names. Does Tua need competition? Are you gonna? You're not gonna spend a first round pick on a quarterback. You have a second this year, right? And no third and fourth. I have to look, because I'm covering the Senior Bowl next week, but I'm not into draft mode yet. So
ask him next week.
Right. Or even ask me later this afternoon. But are you drafting a quarterback? Does Tua need competition? I think we're past that stage now. What do you think?
Right. And I mean, they have Mike White under contract, so it's not like you saw anything negative from Mike White as far as the backup quarterback. He really didn't play in any meaningful snaps because Tua was healthy all season. So you could run back that same situation. You saved money from how much you were paying Teddy Bridgewater the year before. I know you like Teddy and you wanted him to stick around, I recall. But yeah, you trade out one South Florida kid for another. So for any of my biases, and that's equal for me. I'm all about the South Florida players. Yeah, as far as competition, I mean, I don't think right now how much would that move him. If anything, it might have a negative impact, because Tua's already made so many strides from where he was 2 years earlier. And then you're kind of going to tell him, if you do that, that all that was for naught, that it's just we still don't see it in you. And yeah, I mean, you need to push him. It's not like he should just relax and be content with what he has been able to do. But I mean, the guy has put up numbers. He led the league in passing yards, led the league in passer rating the year before. Just has to be better against the good teams, which, what's the formula for that? we still haven't figured that out. But be better against the good teams. Show that he can produce when he's down one of his targets. Tyreek Hill going down in the Titans game, that hurt the offense a lot. But then he did bounce back against the Jets, throwing that touchdown to Jalen Waddle, and handle pressure better. So he'll have some things that he can hone in on going into the offseason.
All right, before we get into the Furones bonus, Jim Rios, Lacey Baker, I got you. I'm answering your question later on today. He's saying, or he or she is saying, O-line. Tua just needs more time. So I will take that on later on this afternoon. But now,
was that an attempt at a rhyme?
No, actually, it wasn't.
Close.
No, right now that you say that. But now we get to the Furones bonus.
Oh.
Here we go. All right, baby. So David Furones, the end zone fumble rule. You wanna change it. I think that you hate this rule, but we saw this in the divisional game. We saw the Buffalo KC that Jordan Poyer knocks the ball loose from McCole Hardman near the goal line. Early in the fourth quarter, the Chiefs are leading 27-24. The ball rolls into the end zone and then out of bounds for a touchback, basically a turnover. A fumble that goes forward and out of the end zone is a touchback, and the defense gets the ball. So if the ball would have been gone out of bounds before crossing the goal line, the Chiefs retain possession. What do you think about that rule, that if it goes forward, out of the end zone, through the end zone, it's a touchback?
All right. So here's the thing. I've always kind of liked this rule. The first time I ever saw it happen in a game as a kid, I was so intrigued by it. Wow, all that just from fumbling the ball through the end zone. What I loved about it was the chaos aspect of a team being so close to scoring, a player trying to reach out for the goal line, as one commonly does, and that if they fumble in and out of the end zone, it's so absurdly punitive that they arbitrarily lose possession without the defense recovering the ball, and the recovering team gains 20 yards due to a touchback. So, but if I'm being honest here, it absolutely should not be this way. In no other part of the field is the forward advancement of a ball fumbled out of bounds honored. If an offensive player reaches for a first down, fumbles, and the ball goes out beyond the sticks, the next play reverts back to the spot of the fumble. So it's not like you get the first down because the ball was fumbled forward, or even is it a turnover because the ball was fumbled forward. Right. So why should the end zone be viewed differently, especially if it results in a turnover when the defense does not need to make a clear recovery like they do everywhere else on the field? So, no, it should just be the next down with the ball at the 1 or wherever the fumble occurred. Maybe it occurred at the 3 and the ball just went really far. It should only be a touchback for the defense if that team makes a recovery in the end zone. All that said, if I'm rooting for a team that benefits from it, oh, I love that rule.
That's right. Exactly. So, Furones, this is actually up for discussion. This has been a hot topic in the NFL for years, and my very, very casual research showed that in 2017, that was the last time the league considered making a change to this rule. There were 8 offensive fumbles through the end zone that year. And the competition committee decided, after much consideration and review of the video, the committee did not believe a rule change was necessary, believing it is an exciting play that rewards the defense for an offensive error. My question to you is, do you think times have changed? I know we don't have any insight, but just do you think for any reason sentiment might change with the competition committee and this rule gets overturned in the offseason?
Well, for any rule change to occur, it has to take place in a huge setting where everyone watches it and everyone chimes in. So a playoff game, like we had with the Bills-Chiefs game 2 years ago, when it was just like that first possession touchdown wins the game, then that was up for discussion. But if you don't want to lose the game in overtime, stop the team from scoring a touchdown. I mean, they even added it where all you have to do is hold them to a field goal, and you get your shot too. So, defense is part of the game as well. I mean, I get it from the standpoint of, all right, this is a one rule that benefits the defense, but does it need to benefit the defense that much that you not only, without recovering the fumble, which you have to recover any other fumble anywhere else on the field, unless if it's backwards for a safety, which that's a whole other story, because then the offense really should be penalized. You were backed up and you fumbled and it went through your own end zone. But which I think in a lot of cases, the offense just prefers to give up the safety in that case, because you'd rather not give up the touchdown, stand to see if you can get a stop after giving up the 2 points. But, I mean, it's not only that you don't have to recover, it's that you also get 20 yards because of it. If anything, just I know any play in the end zone that's recovered, not to touchback, but you didn't even recover the fumble. So if anything, maybe meet halfway and say, all right, defense gets the ball, but it's at the 1 or something. I mean, we do have arbitrary rules like that, like a pass interference in the end zone. It's not a touchdown; it's placed at the 1. So there are little workarounds that you can do as well. So it's not so absurdly punitive to the offense.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. I hadn't thought about that. You get the 20 yards also for not doing anything. That's a very good point. But you see, we learn stuff on this show. A little education. I like that. All right. So, Furones, let us go to our final segment, and that is, are you all in, go for broke, win now in 2024? I'll tell you this, I definitely am. I like the plan of the blank these picks and let's go for it. Like I always said that like I'm not a very patient man. So like when I see a avenue there, you've amassed all this talent. This is a rare opportunity. You've got the talent. It's just now your plan needs to be tweaked in some places, changed in other places, but you don't need get rid of the quarterback, get rid of the coach, get rid of the GM. Maybe after next season. This season, you've just got to figure it out. Go for it. You've got the talent. Do it. That's what I say. What do you say, Furones?
All right, so the question is, are you all in, go for broke, win now in 2024?
Yep.
And this is our final segment?
This is our final segment.
Okay, so the answer is yes. And thank you for tuning in to this week's Dolphins Deep Dive. No, yeah, definitely. I mean, you didn't trade away all those draft picks, rebuild entirely in 2019, do all these things over 5 years, now going on a 6, to just blow it all away because of one season that ended with an absurd amount of injuries toward the end of the year that really just debilitated your roster. So, yeah, I mean, you run it back by and large. You got to make some tweaks. You got to work with the salary cap, do all the things that we talked about earlier in the show. But you don't just throw it all away because, okay, now it's a second straight year where you lost in the first round of the playoffs. You did improve by 2 wins, and it just still wasn't enough to win the division because you are in the same division with the Buffalo Bills. Granted, once the Buffalo Bills were 6-6, you had it in your own possession. The ball was in your court. It didn't matter what the Bills did from then on. You controlled your own fate, and then you still, because you lost that game to the Titans, and then you had those. Yes, they were tough games at Baltimore and then back against the Bills. But, I mean, when you lost that Week 4 game against the Bills, all you wanted was that next shot. And then you had them at home. All injuries aside, all other factors, you still had a lead late in the game, and then you give up a punt return touchdown, and then your offense is a no-show in the second half, and Josh Allen leads 1 touchdown drive, and you lose. That drops you all the way down to 6, despite how much better this season was than last season. But there's still a lot of positive signs. There's a lot of reasons. Yes, I know a lot of people will refer to them as excuses, but those excuses are valid. They're reasons that when you lose that much talent, attrition due to injury, especially at edge rusher, when it stacks up at one position. I know they survived a lot of injuries early in the year when it was just one here, if it was Teron Armstead, or if it was Connor Williams for a little time, if it was Jalen Phillips for that first injury stint, Devon Achane, Jalen Ramsey survived that time. But then it really started to stack up late in the year with a lot of different injuries. So, yes, you have it all in front of you. Stick with this plan. It just needs some tweaks, some small additions, whatever you can do under the salary cap. And then, yeah, you're kicking the can down the road, but when you rebuild later, you're going to have to blow it all up anyway. So, sure, if you have a bunch of cap commitments then from past contracts, and then you're building through the draft again, so be it. Now, but I am concerned about all those years in the future because now you've gone 2 drafts without really gaining much of any talent outside of Devon Achane in those drafts. You've really punted on 2 years of draft picks. So if the Dolphins do, let's say, trade that first-round pick, like Chris Greer said, he is possibly open to if a team comes calling, and they could add another key veteran piece, which I'm sure in this win-now window he wouldn't bash at doing. He wouldn't be shy about doing. Then it's just you're now deciding on your 5th-year options for your last first-round picks, 2021 guys, Jalen Waddle and Jalen Phillips, before you make another first-round pick. So that is a concerning prospect for years down the road when you've gone that many years without a first-round selection or without any really draft talent outside of one great player, Devon Achane.
It is. It's highly concerning, but you know what? I'm at the point where you take care of the future in the future. But right now in 2024, yeah, I'm going for it. By the way, David Laser writes in about your Furones bonus. The rule makes sense. The offensive player is taking a risk to score and putting the ball out. You are correct. It rewards the defense. And he goes on to say, everything favors offense. This is one rule that rewards good defense. So there's that perspective on that. So
yeah, anyway. We mentioned that it's the one rule that does reward defense, but
right.
It doesn't have to be that much. And I mean, think about the team is defending the goal line at the 1-yard line. You are in desperation mode, and a fumble that occurs at the 1-yard line, reaching out for the goal line, meaning you're that close to giving up a touchdown. Now all of a sudden you're completely just wiped away of anything that can be done to you. And then now you gain possession and have an automatic 20-yard gain. It's it's a bit excessive if we're being honest. But I mean, I started that segment by saying I always did love the rule.
Yes, yeah.
because it's so chaotic. But the problem is it's not chaotic.
Yep. All right, so Furones, we can't get away from Tua talk. So look, here's what's going on here in the chat. So 101 says you're not going anywhere with Tua. This will be another Ryan Tannehill. Adam Lynch says, did Tannehill make the Pro Bowl? Did Tannehill lead the NFL in passing? Did Tannehill get to the playoffs back-to-back years? Did Tannehill ever do anything outside of 8-8? And True Talk comes back with, yes, he made the Pro Bowl in Tennessee. But the point here is, this is not going to be another Tannehill from Adam Lynch. True Talk 101 thinks it will be. Fitzgerald Grass comes in and says, this Dolphins rebuild looks like a total failure to this point. So I disagree with Fitzgerald Grass. I'm down on what they've accomplished this season, but I think the rebuild still has a lot of potential. And again, I think this goes beyond quarterback. This is not a Tua thing. This goes beyond Tua. Your thoughts on that, Furones?
Well, there was a lot there.
Will this be another Tannehill situation? And does the rebuild look like a total failure? And are the quarterback and the rebuild linked in any way? If it does look like a failure, if it does.
Yeah, well, first on Tua. So Tannehill got, 7 seasons, right? You got 7 seasons with the Dolphins. So Tua just completed his 4th. So, I just don't think, if you move on from Tua, it'll be once we do see that end of that initial rebuild and then the build up toward this contending team, this team that, right now wants to contend, still hasn't really contended beyond the wild card round, needs to prove that it can contend. So I think you have to see that through the end before you call it a failure. So yeah, the two things are kind of linked in a way. You just got the best that you've gotten out of Tua in consecutive seasons, and he just stayed healthy for the first time in his career. So yes, there's still some play that's left to be desired, but rarely is a quarterback a finished product after 4 seasons. I mean, yeah, Patrick Mahomes was his first year as a starter, okay, but that's not for everyone. That's Patrick Mahomes. So and you're not just gonna suddenly pluck a Patrick Mahomes out of thin air. So you got to see this through the end, and then once it indeed doesn't pan out, now maybe once you're at the end with Tua, if that day does come and you're still in this window where you can win with the roster, maybe the first thing you do is go with some veteran quarterback that becomes available that offseason. I can't see that far into the future, so different things can pan out, like maybe the way the Jets acquired Aaron Rodgers, something like that. But if not, then yeah, once you do start an earnest rebuild, if that scenario ends up playing out, then yeah, you build through a quarterback in the draft, and by then you maybe trade some of those key veterans that you signed to those long-term deals, and you have all those cap burdens once you are rebuilding to end up acquiring draft picks. You end up doing sort of like the Los Angeles Rams had to do. Jalen Ramsey, how the Dolphins got him from the Rams, and then the Rams very quickly are right back in playoff contention, got into the wild, actually the number 6 seed in the much less competitive NFC, but still, that was a quick turnaround for the Rams when it just seemed like they were blowing it all up, sending Ramsey to the Dolphins. So, there are different paths that the team can take over time, but right now you got to see it through this core.
Yeah. All right. So Raphael Courtwright says Tannehill's 4-year stats: 4,208 yards passing, 24 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. Tua's 4-year stats: 4,625 yards, 29 touchdowns, 14 interceptions with 1 extra game. Fairly similar stats, but Tua is in better position because he's got a better team around him. I think he's got a better coaching staff around him, and I say that knowing that Tannehill's staff had Dan Campbell and Lou Anarumo and Todd Bowles and I think he was there. I think he came through it. Maybe Bowles was gone. Bowles might have been gone. But anyway, I do think that Tua is in better position to win. I think Tua is a more talented quarterback. Tannehill, I think Tannehill was slightly above average. I've said that. Tua, I think, is a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback. So take that for what it's worth. Here's one from Key Dave as we get out of here. Key Dave says 37 players hitting free agency. This is about the Dolphins. 37 players hitting.
Oh, I didn't know. I didn't know that's what the show was about.
I know, right? No. This is not about the Carolina Panthers, by the way. Hey.
Wait. Let me find my Dolphins notebook. Hold on.
Hey, congratulations to our friend Dan Morgan, by the way, for getting that Panthers GM job. I covered Dan.
That guy.
At good job by Dan. Good man.
Cold Springs, Terrell, and Miami Hurricanes.
Yep, Brett, former Hurricane. That's right. And then he was what was his high school was up in Broward.
Right? It was Taravella.
Taravella, that's it.
Taravella High School in Coral Springs.
That's it. Yep. So, okay, Key Dave, about the Dolphins, 37 players hitting free agency, injured star players, and no depth to replace them. That's a failure. I don't think that it can be called a failure at this point until you definitely it gets this season also, because you still got all those star players. I know there was a lot of injuries. I still think there's a lot of reason to be optimistic about this team next season. There really is. And even though you've got some aging guys and some guys with injuries piling up on them like Teron Armstead and Xavent Howard, they still have some good games left in them. You still got a good core, a very talented core that it took you a couple of years to put together. But now you're here. I'm not throwing this out before this season. I'm giving it this entire season, and then we'll see where we're at. But this is a playoff team. That's a slam dunk. The question is, can you get to the Super Bowl this year? But I'm optimistic. I'm keeping this team together. Furones, you get the last word on this team, this season, the off season, whatever.
Yeah, this team, this roster, it had Super Bowl aspirations if everyone's healthy. Now, no team is going to be fully healthy, but this is a pretty well-rounded roster. I mean, early in the season, we're talking about that this is probably the most well-rounded roster this franchise has had. We probably got to even go past the 80s, that maybe those teams in the 70s that won Super Bowls. So, yes, I think it was a huge snowball of injuries that deteriorated the end of the season, along with, yes, the play on the field. They could have overcome some of those injuries, but end of the day, you're still close. You see that the product is there if you just can put it all together. And with this experience that you've had and some of the hardships, go into next season starting to gain confidence in those tough games against competing teams.
Yep, I agree. So, all right. So that's a wrap for this edition. I think we'll be back in 2 weeks to talk Senior Bowl, draft, free agency, salary cap, all that kind of good stuff. So we will let you know on social media, but we will definitely see you soon. That's David Furones. I'm Chris Perkins. You're watching Dolphins Deep Dive with Perk on SunSentinel.com.